On this podcast, we will talk about the tools we have used in order to remind us who and what we are.
We will talk about the spiritual technologies that bring us back to the knowing that we are sovereign.
That bring us back to God. The only actual advice you will get on this podcast is to consult within.
The rest is all the things that happen when you do it.
My name is Jasai.
And my name is Stori.
And this is Sovereign You. You nodded. You ready?
Yeah.
Hi, welcome to Sovereign You. Sovereign University. That's where we are. What do you understand about life now that you had no idea about 5 years ago when you were in high school? What is one thing that you absolutely understand clearly about life now?
I would say moving out. That was the first thing that came to mind.
Mm-hmm.
The feeling of being on my own. I feel like I'm used to being on my own. I'm used to being in solitude. I'm used to being spending time with myself.
Mm-hmm.
But to really live in a place, and mind you, I don't even live in a place where there aren't other people.
Right.
But to really live in a place, at least for the first year that I was there,
Mm-hmm.
not really knowing everybody, but just really being in a place where I was the only person I could really depend on
Mm-hmm.
and feel safe with. Yeah, that feeling I had never known before in my body. It was weird.
So you experienced that. That experience wasn't just a cognitive thinking kind of sorting.
No, it was very uncomfortable
in your physical body.
Hard to sleep.
Huh.
For like the first night or two.
Where if you can recall, because that was a minute ago now. How long you been in your own place?
3 years.
Oh, bravo.
Yeah.
Hey,
3 years
applause
in
sound.
June?
Okay.
July. I moved in on the 4th of July.
Independence Day.
That's crazy. I didn't even think about it like that. That's hilarious.
See how God works? God's like, no, there's something significant is happening here.
Yes.
Where in your body did you feel the discomfort of when you were having
just like tense stress, like in my shoulders and my back? I think I even remember calling you the first night I slept there and I told you how uncomfortable I was. And then the first earthquake by myself.
Oh my goodness.
Same feeling. I was like, no, I need protection.
Outside protection.
Yes. I need to be protected because who is alone during an earthquake?
A lot of people.
Like, it was a lot. But yeah. So that was something I definitely was foreign to. There's not enough times that you could be by yourself in high school or in adolescence, growing up in a family that you would know what it would feel like to live on your own. Yeah.
That's helpful. That's an understanding. I'm sure a lot of young people, because I know a lot of young people think about, I know when I was young, I thought about, what is it going to be like when I'm in my own place? And I think when you're younger, you get all like your shoulders is loose about it. They real loose about it.
Yeah.
And then you get in there and this is a little different.
Very different. Yeah.
Okay. I like it.
What about you 5 years ago?
5 years ago, let me count back because I was grown, so I was in my grown thing.
35 is pretty. Is that
no? Girl, I'm 47.
You would be 40. You would be 40. Okay.
I would be 42 5 years ago.
Okay.
Listen, give me all my years. I'll take all my years. Something that I learned between 42 and 47 that I did absolutely not know. I did not know that God talks to me constantly 5 years ago. I did not know I could call up that experience, that exchange anytime I wanted to. That has been revolutionary for me. Absolutely. I know sort of 5 years earlier than 5 years ago, because I knew that meditation was helping me, I would want to be in meditation every day, like get a meditation time every day, decide get a meditation time every day. And I wouldn't do it. I would not show up for meditation every day,
That's okay.
So I was like, but I was frustrated with myself about that, and I would get in little, chat with myself, tough chat with myself about not doing the things that I knew I was supposed to do. Listen, understanding that that space is an opportunity to have an intimate conversation with God,
Yes.
I be rushing. I be rushing to it.
So that's a really
Rushing.
beautiful way to look at it. Or, I feel like that's an evolved way to look at it because from where I see it now is I know that that's a part of the process. Like I know that even if I'm not showing up for it, the fact that it keeps showing up for me, I'm
Mm.
just like, okay, that's coming.
Yes.
So even if I don't, like I said, focusing on what's in front of you, even if I don't have the time to do it now, or even mentally, I can't
Mhm.
fathom doing it now, if it keeps showing up, I'm like, that's next.
Yeah, that's on the list. I love that. I love that
Yeah.
you've been able to sort that so it doesn't weigh so much on you. Because I
Yeah.
know that, for me, I wasn't as compassionate with myself, certainly when I was your age and 10 years ago, that I would just be like, damn.
Oh, yeah. I've been there too,
Yeah.
though. Yeah.
Like just what, why? Why are you not showing up?
Right.
Why are you not doing it?
And I think that that piece that I shared from the subtle body about thoughts and how when
Hmm.
they come to you, they don't just disappear.
Right.
Like they may not be, it's just like a thought when you're talking to somebody and like, oh, I forgot that thought.
Ah, right.
And then it comes back to you and you're like, oh, I remember now, I'm going to tell you.
Okay.
I think that's the same things with thoughts that need to be followed by action.
Hmm.
Like just because you're not doing it right now doesn't mean that it's going to completely disappear. It doesn't belong to you in some way.
I love that. I learned something just now, right
Oh,
there.
see? Praise God.
Just now, right there. All right. So today we are talking about a very interesting, powerful subject um, in the subject of death.
Okay.
Right now in my life, death and the subject of death and the experience of death are super, super prominent for me. Um, and so I thought, this might be because here in the West, we have sort of culturally, maybe in small pockets, death is different. People are doing death differently, but I know by and large, people are quite uncomfortable still with death. Um, and in some of the things that I am practicing and learning and teaching, I am looking at death in the microcosm in order to process the reality of the macro death or the what some people might refer to as the big death, the body death.
Physical death.
Yes, the physical death. Um, and so I'm curious about your experience of death. How you grew up in a different generation than me, so maybe you can even shed some light on how, if there is a your generation's view of death or the way death gets talked about, what that looks like now in your circle, um, and your relationship to death. Like, do you handle that at all in your life?
For me, death, I'm going to first talk about the circle and the friends aspect. I don't really talk about death with my friends, honestly,
Mm,
like at all. Like
ever.
in no way, shape, or form. Actually, that's really interesting to think about, but yeah, I don't. I feel like when it comes up for, like, let's say somebody famous dies,
Okay.
I feel like that's when the conversation will come up, and it's more so like an aha moment, like, whoa, like
Oh.
we could die at any moment, at any time.
Mm.
Like that just becomes really apparent to me. But as far as my relationship to death has definitely evolved. I feel like, well, I know when I was younger, I would get really like almost like existentially afraid of death.
Oh.
Like I would think about it super deeply and super intensely and like just kind of like fathom what it is. And
Mm.
I said to you, I was like, I think that I have concluded that it comes from the fact that I'm a life form. So I'm living this life.
Mhm.
all I know is life. I don't even remember being born, right?
Right.
So all I literally know is this life. So the idea that I have to die, just like I was born, in order for me to be here, I had to be born. I
Mhm.
have to die.
Mhm.
The idea of that when I was younger was super frightening. And I
Mhm.
would just like stare off into space and literally be trapped. Like, you know how you can be trapped on Instagram looking at particular
Yes.
reels? I would be like sucked
Oh.
into what death could be like.
What did you come out of there with anything? Did you have any conclusions when you were
Nothing but
there?
fear, no.
Oh,
Just like
okay.
yeah, no.
And how do you think that so what is that transformed into for you? Nowadays, what's death like in your body and your experience when you come across it?
I accept it, but my anxiety shows up as that
Mm,
fear of death.
okay.
Yeah.
And I think that that is one of the reasons why I know it's an important subject because we all, like you understand, we all must die. The fact that we were you know that there was a time when I was a child. You see pictures of me as a child and you know you didn't exist in a physical form when I was a child.
Right.
So, you know that there was a before you. Like we all know these things. Like there's a before me and things are fine. Nobody's like, "Oh my god, there's no story in the world. What is the world going to do?" And then we know that there's going to be an after me or an after you. Like when I'm gone, the world is still going to be fine. It's going to world.
For sure.
And so the idea that if we understand that and then we're still super super afraid of death, the question becomes why? How has death gotten presented that even though we know this thing has to happen, it has happened to everyone who has ever lived, will happen to everyone who's ever lived. Why are we so afraid of it? And I I feel like I know about a lot of other things now that the way we've been programmed around death and the idea of dying needs a tune up.
Mm.
Um, so practicing dying came, as a directive from spirit to me to practice dying. And I know that we have done this in various forms. And I don't know if in the beginning I was thinking about it as practicing dying, which is probably why it was easier to enter.
Mm.
But things like silence, stillness, fasting, even wearing a waist bead is a bit of practice in dying. Um, so it taught me, oh, things can basically change because death is a change. It's a change from life being here to not being here. That's it. That's really all death is. That if you practice dying, you realize things can change from this thing to that thing, and everybody's still good.
Yeah.
Even when it's uncomfortable to think about, like it's uncomfortable to think about going from one school to another school. But you're not gonna die.
Mm.
You're not gonna. So I love the conversation and the practice for what it allows for life. It allows us to release some of the energy and some of the tension around our fears for this particular thing, frees up some energy in us to then live more fully.
Yeah.
So, have you ever known anybody, like in your personal, like this is a person I've spoken to, loved, held hands with, anybody that has died that helped you sort of see death more clearly?
It's helped me see my perception of death more clearly, I
Okay.
would say. When I was in middle school, a friend of mine that went to the same middle school as me but was now in high school
Mm,
committed suicide.
mm,
And so literally like the feeling of like looking at my phone and like seeing his
mm,
face on my timeline is literally coming in my body right now.
mhm.
And I was just like, why is everybody like posting him? Right? Like, what is
Oh,
this?
okay.
And then I started to read the comments and I was just like, and at that point, dinner was ready. And I did not eat that night. I was like, I don't want to eat. I'm not hungry. I'm good.
Oh, you remember the time of day.
Yes,
Oh.
absolutely. I remember the whole situation. And then once it was time for his service, seeing his body, because it was an open casket service, seeing his body was a lot. And I feel like from after that experience, I learned, and people said, you shouldn't, if they're your close loved ones, you don't necessarily want to view them in that light, because, that'll be a lasting memory, and you don't really want that to like corrode your other memories.
For sure.
So from there, I feel like that taught me don't do that, because it was super challenging for me to see him in the casket. And I feel like I also, because people have been able to laugh at my pain, kind of like Kevin Hart, you know what I'm saying? Like, I'm a pretty funny person, I guess, like the way that I react to things.
Okay.
So when I was like, I literally started to like physically shake, and I was like crying, like, oh my God, like that was so much. Everybody in the line. So we were lining up to see the casket, and then we went out in a line to line up to see the doves.
Oh, okay.
Everybody in the line, mind you, these are all familiar faces. I went to school with them. I know them very closely. Everybody was laughing.
Oh, because they were kids too.
Everybody was laughing, but I wasn't like, I didn't feel vulnerable or sad that they were laughing. I was happy that it literally had brought joy to everybody in such a like,
and what
a
were they
vulnerable
laughing
time.
at?
My reaction.
Oh, they were laughing at you.
Yes.
You was really.
I was really like spooked.
Oh, wow.
I was spooked.
And you were not offended that they were laughing?
No.
Oh, okay.
No. I got it. Like, I knew them.
Oh, you knew. You know how to act.
Yeah, I know them. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, I was definitely spooked. For sure.
So we live in a world now that is very different than the world I grew up in so much as there are lots of people who have a gift, an expressed gift, an exercised gift of communicating with the dead, the people who have left their bodies. What is your experience? So this person passed. Do you have any experience of engaging with the energy, even in thought, with the energy of somebody who's left? Is that something that you're familiar with? And maybe not even someone, because it doesn't have to be someone. I know that there are people who've passed that are like celebrities, and other people who've not related to them will have energetic kind of exchange with them, if that makes any sense.
I would say the closest connection that I have, with that regard, would be to my grandmother. So my dad's mom. And then I would also say Nipsey Hussle. Like, I have a picture.
So I think Nipsey all the time.
I have a picture of Nipsey Hussle from the what is it? The
Final Call.
The Final Call. I have a newspaper when he was on the cover of the Final Call, right in the corner of my closet. Like, yeah, the part that connects to the mirror, I have a picture of him right up there, and his expression is so interesting. And even when I wasn't living at my apartment, I was living here, it was in my room. His expression is so interesting because depending on my mood is what I see in his face. Right?
That's beautiful.
So he doesn't have the kind of like big smile or like obvious frown, but it can be interpreted based off of your emotion. It's like one of the most interesting emotional exercises that I have had access to, because it helps me be honest about how I'm feeling. So I feel like if I see a frown on his face, I know that I'm having like some sort of internal challenge. And if I see like this kind of light grin, if that's how I perceive it, then I know that that's how I feel inside. It's so interesting.
You're a magi.
Magi?
So listen, this is how art, also, first of all, this is how art works.
Yes, of course, it's interpretation.
This is how
he
art
has
works.
Like a very, it's so remarkable
like
about him. He has a very like up for interpretation demeanor.
I love that. Oh, I love that so much that you can experience that and name that, because so much of the spirit world is available to us for that, for understanding our material experience. So much of the spirit world is in support of that, being used in that way if we are present. So that's dope. Shout out to
I haven't seen a frown on his face in a long time.
Oh, that's you happy?
Yeah, I'm internally, and that's the thing. Like, I have internal content. Like, I'm content internally, and so when I'm really looking for an honest, so we were talking about balance, when I'm
Mhm.
really looking for an honest gauge, art and, looking at his picture
Mm.
and things like that allow me to understand. Even when I collect pictures,
Mhm.
that's a reflection of how I'm feeling. And so,
Ah.
yeah, I
Like what
think,
I
yeah,
see on your Instagram crawl
story,
thing
yeah.
stories. Okay. Beautiful. Um, when we brainstormed these conversations and we brainstormed death, were you at all interested in the subject for your own field of study? Do you have it on your radar as something you're curious about, and in what ways, if so?
And what was the question again? I'm sorry.
Death. Are
Okay.
you in your own personal, because I know we brainstorm these ideas and we
Right.
talk about what we could talk about. Death was my conversation.
Mhm.
But when I brought that up, was there something in your that comes from in you that's like, oh no, these are the things I'm curious about, or these are the things that interest me or engage me or have me maybe even closed off related to death or the subject?
No, not closed off. I
Okay.
would say that I've definitely experienced an honest feeling of being closed off and definitely reserved from death.
Hmm.
I don't feel that way now. But I also, while I am aware that it is something that is gonna imminent, it's gonna happen,
Yes.
um, it does still, you know, have a little effect on me a little bit.
So then let's talk about a particular kind of death, because I think that when you say that, I feel like I understand that you're talking about physical death. Let's talk about
Yes.
spiritual death.
Okay.
How does that play? What does that look like in your life? Is spiritual death the death of the I know people use words like the death of the ego, and I just feel like that's so broad and it's hard for people to wrap their arms around. Um, because sometimes people are like, I don't even really know if I know what the ego is. But spiritually, is death a thing that you have to handle or hold, or emotional deaths? Any kind of little deaths, I think, is what people call them,
Mhm.
as opposed to the big body death. Um, are you engaging in little deaths, and is that teaching you anything about life, about how to live?
Yeah, I think most of my deaths come from obeying, right? So
Okay.
we talked about obeying ourselves. Most of my deaths come from the resistance to obey myself. So whatever that resistance is, getting over that is a death for me. So like the other day when I told you about the whole I ate 3 bites of the ice cream.
Oh, yes.
Definitely could have resisted the ice cream, and it was so interesting because I literally didn't want to eat the food at work.
Mhm.
And so I drank coffee so that would have suppressed my appetite. And of course, then I'm presented with free pizza and free ice cream. So, even though I'm not eating, something I don't want to eat, I'm also eating something now I've traded that
Right.
for something that's just not good for me. And so I feel like when I'm not in a space like that, I could have resisted that and that would have felt like a burning feeling. It would have felt like a
Mm.
kind of discomfort watching my coworkers eat it or, just enjoy it in a way that I would have wanted to. Um, but yeah, I feel like there are times where I am into the death,
Mhm.
and there are times where I'm just like, "No, that can be saved for later."
I'm not gonna practice that
Not do
right
that.
now.
No,
Do you have any questions for me about this subject?
about death. What kind of deaths are you practicing?
Um, I am looking at it. I'm looking at the the color of it, like the tech, like what kind of colors and textures and temperatures are associated with it. There's when I think about spiritual deaths, the space is dark. So I'm exploring darkness. I'm exploring things that happen in the dark, things that culture calls dark, and seeing where the drawback happens. Like, is that something I can walk into with my eyes open and my breath steady and look at it and really examine it and let it show me what it really is? So, really, like deliberately reaching out and engaging things that would typically make people recoil.
Mm.
Um, or feeling what it feels like to resist doing something, that kind of resistance deaths.
Yeah.
Um, Fasting for me, of course, for a decade or more has been a steady practice of like dying to the and it's really interesting when you talk when I think about fasting because food is so essential for real and as an actuality, but then culture makes it even more essential. So it's not they don't even make it more pressing for the body, but then it's essential for gatherings, it's essential in relationships, it's essential um as a support tool, maybe even in places where it shouldn't necessarily be relevant, but allowing myself to let those associations die so that I'm really only consuming food when it's appropriate for my physical body has been a huge, huge, huge thing. And I've been doing it for such a long time. And it's interesting to me that it hasn't just fix itself for good there. And,
Mm.
I'm seeing that things that are super, super deeply ingrained in us, while we can sort of shave off a little bit every now and then and, make it an easier haul to deal with or to look at some of these things. I don't know. I wonder, do they ever go away? Do they ever really die? Or do you just get better at riding the wave until they subside?
Mm.
Again. So that's fun for me. I used to be afraid of the dark as a child, maybe as an adult too. Um, but now I'm practicing walking around the house with none of the lights on.
Mm.
Like literally because what we do with death is we fear it. So I feel like if we get in spaces where there's fear and then we move through fear, then fear is not the thing anymore. So that's not the relationship to anything and death being included in that.
Yeah, and yesterday I actually had the thought that, and I was examining it and I was really testing it in my mind with different scenarios. But I think I've concluded that for me, fear is just the fear of being fearless.
Ooh.
Like if you really like, okay, think about it. If you decide I'm gonna jump out of a plane, right, with a
Okay.
parachute,
Ooh.
what is the scariest thing about doing that?
Did not open and you slamming on the ground.
I would say doing it
Ooh. That's a lot
would
of
be the
thoughts.
things
I
that would
hold a
be
lot of
that would be
like
scary to me.
particularly about that. Like
But
that.
the thing is that that can only happen from you doing it.
I see. Ooh. That one is so literally my mind is shut all the way down. Like almost like my mind is like, we ain't thinking about that. We ain't doing that. So that don't even matter. Like it just the whole thing
Because
went
in
dark.
order to do it, you would literally have to be fearless because it invokes fear.
Yeah. Ooh.
So I was just like, okay, that's really interesting. Like the fear
Of
of being
being
fearless.
fearless.
Because and then it started, so I tried to like really make it make sense. And then I remembered us talking about you saying, or I remember you saying how the fix for something is literally embedded in the
Mm,
challenge, or the
yes.
challenge is literally embedded in the fix. It's like
Mhm.
it's like, what is that called, like the poison and
The
the
antidote.
antidote, yeah. So it's the same thing.
Ooh.
Like you're literally scared because you don't want to live not scared. Like I feel like I've even had that thought about that, like with as far as anxiety. Like and so that's when it came up, when I
Mhm.
was having anxiety, and I just decided, well, just don't be afraid of that. That made me afraid.
Like if I can't have have this anxiety, if I not
Yeah, like as if anxiety is some sort of, and a Nipsey Hussle sister has like explained it this way too, like you think that you're preparing yourself for something bad to happen.
and you are.
This
Yeah.
is not a preparation. Nothing is going to happen.
Mhm.
So if you let go, you
Ooh.
won't be not safe. You will just have let go. You just won't have anxiety anymore.
it's so I'm thinking about my hot air balloon experience. It's really one of the most profound experiences in my life because as an adult, like in time so close to now that I can remember viscerally, like right here, my neck is super tight thinking about it. And I said, obviously, I survived that. I'm here, sitting here. But I remember when Jocelyn asked me to go to do the hot air balloon ride, and I was like, in sort of light, flippant theory, sure, that feels fun. In my mind's eye, I've seen that on TV. That's great. That's a good time.
Right.
And then I think that thing sank in. I
And then you
started
got
thinking
there.
about it. No. Like even before that, and so I started making excuses. Like I was calling Kim on the phone. I was like, this when Kim was in DC. I was calling Kim on the phone. I was like, oh, I don't know. I don't
This
know.
idyllic picnic
Yeah.
type situation
It
is
just started. Yeah, it
all
started,
of a sudden
started to
this
get
is the
super
wrong
clear.
idea.
And at the time, Jocelyn's a friend because of our relationship. If she asked me to do something, I'm supporting her because I watched her support a human through life and death. And I'm like, you know what? She's somebody to lend my support to because, this is what I've decided for this human, for all of the valor of what I've witnessed her do for her sister. And so I was like, and this is the thing. So we were talking in the car yesterday about not being in relationships where people make you lie to them. Like I saw myself all the way bullshitting. I was thinking of like, what are you going to say to her? Just call her and say something. So tell her why you can't go. I was just like making stuff up because I was starting to panic.
Damn.
And this is all because my mind was like, you could die.
No
You
way.
could die.
And that is true.
Every day, though, every minute of the day. This ground could shake right now and shake us all to the end.
Like literally, that's not untrue. And I feel like that's what I had to start telling myself about my anxiety. Like, okay, fine. That's a possibility. Now what?
You be talking to yourself crazy. Fine. Just fuck it.
That is a possibility.
And now what?
Now what?
Man.
Because I've had enough experiences with my anxiety to know I'm just going to literally be scared until it's clear that there's no reason to be scared. Like, no, I'm just going to decide there's no reason for this expression of fear because I'm familiar with this expression of fear. This is not immediate, move fast, think now, because that kind of fear is not crippling. That's motivated.
That's right now. That's instinct.
Exactly. That's instinct over fear. So if I allow myself to be calm, then I also, should something happen, I allow myself to also be in the present moment and address the real thing that's happening.
I'm thinking about that in terms of a hot air balloon, and my mind is like, but you don't know how to drive a hot air balloon. And if it starts falling out the sky, it ain't nothing you can do instinctively except fall out the sky.
Just accept that. You have to accept that.
Oh my God. The beauty of overcoming one's fear, though, because it isn't real. Whatever I was doing in my head, I can say from here, didn't happen. It just didn't happen. And what did happen was extraordinary. And I'm certain that experience, which was now almost 3 years ago, I'm certain that put me in touch with why I needed to work with my fear of death. Because what did happen when I just said yes, and I was cussing the whole way. I mean, I think I had to be there maybe 6 a.m, and we lived like 2 hours from where the place was. So I'm driving 4:00 a.m. I am furious. I had never been over a decision I made for myself that was voluntary. I'd never been so furious in my whole life. I'm like, this is stupid. And this the whole way. I know Kim was on the phone like, I don't understand why you don't just let this go. Just because you're going. You're literally on your way to this hot air. And I was like, I'm going to show up with a funky attitude. And I did. I sat in the car the whole time until it was time to like take the van. And then you chase the hot air balloon. Like nothing about it felt safe. My ego was like, you see that this is deadly.
Right.
Because you, in your van, when you're getting ready to upload into your balloon, you don't go to some parking lot that's nice and we are chasing this balloon in like the Dukes of Hazzard.
Just like that video you sent me of the car making a U-turn on the side of that mountain. I promise you, I promise you that that's exactly how it was in
I
Jamaica.
would have
And it was a
lost.
rainforest, and we had just came back from the Bob Marley tour, so I was smacked when that was happening. And I was just
can't even
like,
imagine.
and it was retrograde, so I was like, this is a ritual. We are here. Somebody is praying on us. We're here to die. We are a sacrifice. Because it just was unbelievable what we were about to do. And so then I was just like, and the Jamaicans act like their roads are California roads. So they're literally like swerving on this toothpick of a road. And I'm just like, I cannot. And the guy, and see, that was the thing. So that's the thing where you have to, if you're going to travel the world, you have to be able to put yourself in environments that you know nothing about and trust the people who do know. Because that man was whipping that car.
And he was
and
alive.
We were so safe. And the woman in the front was just so comfortable and so like relaxed. And of course it was like when we were riding home, people were nervous because it was raining. Because we did wait for maybe like an hour at, once the tour was over, just waiting for the rain to calm down. But then at some point, we just had to go. And I was literally, once we had to get on the bus, I had to just decide, I'm going to let go and let God. And so everybody in my party just decided to go to sleep, but I couldn't sleep.
No way.
So I just was looking out the window, and I was so blessed by the beauty of Jamaica. And I was just
God
like,
showed up. God showed up for you. Like, I was just as the support.
Yeah, I was just like, you know what?
This
I'm
is
here.
it. Let me focus on the beauty.
Literally,
and I'm telling you, and I think that this is what facing deaths, small deaths, and the big one. I think this is what facing deaths teaches us. So we caught up to this hot air balloon. I got in the hot air balloon. The guy driving the hot air balloon is making balloon down jokes. Like I'm just like, you know what? I have to use my tools because everybody here is not having the same experience as me, obviously.
Right.
And we got up there, and I was this panic kind of stricken. I think I'm gonna die. Not only just getting in the balloon and going up in the sky, but literally while we were up there. Now, when you're in a hot air balloon, and I didn't ask enough questions. I asked a question about how long we were going to be in the hot air balloon while we were weighing ourselves, because you got to be the right weight. Like, it's all relevant. While we were weighing ourselves, I said, well, how long are we up in the sky in a hot air balloon? When this guy said an hour, I was like, that's a lot of time. Like, why does it have to be? You see it? Come down. And so I went up there, and for the first 5, maybe 10 minutes, maybe 15, which is a long time. If you're in every one of those minutes, I was like this. Just everybody was having a good time, and I just couldn't understand it. I'm like, well, how are you all? And I heard the Spirit say to me, open your eyes.
And I'm just trying to think logically. Can a balloon really crash out the sky?
Yes, girl. If that the fire keeps the balloon up. If that
so maybe
fire
the weight
out,
of you could crash out the sky?
Absolutely.
Because even if your body is impacting the weight of the basket, unless the balloon is blown, it's catching air as it's coming down.
Something happens and the fire goes out, because the fire is the thing keeping the balloon in the sky.
Right.
If that fire goes out, that balloon is sinking.
But it's also catching air as it's going down.
Listen, I'm not a scientist. I'm not a whoever decides. I'm not that. I've worked in human resources. But I'm telling you, when God said to me, open your eyes, and it was clear, and my eyes was snapped shut. I don't even know what I'm doing up here. I could be on the ground. I don't see nothing. And I opened my eyes, and I was like, the world is different from up here. I'm in the sky. And when you're in a hot air balloon, you're sitting there. You're not moving. You're not doing you're suspended in midair. And I heard God say something to me that if I had not been in that balloon, which means if I had not gone through all of those machinations and all those fits, it wouldn't have been as clear or as memorable, because I think maybe you even said this morning, somebody was talking to you, you were learning from somewhere that the things you remember come with the most emotion or come with the most feeling. So keep your energy high. It was this idea that things that have a lot of emotion when you experience them stay in your memory longer.
Yeah, yesterday when we were talking about spirit, like how you can
Yeah.
experience things, and even if you've, you know, think that you have healed from it, or the real knowing of whether or not you've healed from a situation is when you're in a similar
Ah,
situation,
right.
or maybe around the same people,
Mhm.
and then you start to feel
Feel
that same feeling. It
feeling. Right.
arises. Yeah.
So that, because it was so tense and it was so thick and it was like my life on literally on the line, when God showed me what God showed me up there and said to me in my ear what God said to me, I knew it was true. Like, God almost had to shake me up and make all that noise so that when the noise stopped, I could hear what was really, really being said.
Hmm.
And I'm even from here now, 3 years later, I can see that promise God made to me unfolding like the flower of life right now before my eyes.
Hmm.
Every time I see new evidence of what God said to me up there, I'm like, oh, I'll never forget it. And I'll never misunderstand what's happening around me, because some part of me surely died up there. The part of me that was
Sure.
at least scared of being in a hot air
Yes,
balloon,
for sure.
dead. That
Yeah.
girl's gone.
Yeah.
I was like, wow, you can scare yourself to death. And you won't die physically, but things will die of you once you overcome that fear. So deliberately putting myself in spaces that even may have a little fear involved in it, or like that one, like all the fear, is really, really valuable for me, because it really does teach me how to live. It teaches me that this fear is not, it's not real. It's not actually what's happening. All this is happening in your head. You can look around and see there are people up here laughing. There are people up here having
Right.
champagne.
And the fear in your head is like, these people are
They're
crazy.
These is
These
wild.
people are wild.
And teaching myself that what's happening in my head is not the pinnacle of what is happening. It's not
For sure.
even have anything to do with the reality of what is happening. Practicing that is so liberating. And I'm grateful for tiny tools that teach that.
Mhm.
So again, silence is a manageable tool to teach that. Even when I want to be compelled to talk, I don't. I don't. So that whatever is in me that feels like they has to obey compulsion, that needs to die.
For sure.
That needs to die. I don't want anything in me running me on compulsion, because that's dangerous. That is unsafe. And that part teaches me how to live.
Yeah.
But that exercise teaches me how to die. And I'm super grateful for that. And if there is anything that anybody listening to this podcast sort of takes away from here, I hope it is that figuring out the things that make you afraid and exploring them. And again, not just in your head, because that's where the spin can happen and you just sort of stay there, but really reaching out to that thing and sitting in the energy of it. Lots of us have habits that feel really difficult in our body, make us shake, make us scared. Like, if I don't have this drink, if I don't have this smoke, if I don't make this call, if I don't, just sit with that as it dies in you, because it does die. It will leave you if you let it.
Hmm.
But if you just answer it, if you just obey a compulsion, it's alive in you. It's winning. It's alive
Yeah.
and running the show. And then it's hard to live like that. It's hard to live well like that. So I feel super, super grateful for all of the things that teach me how to die, these incremental kind of deaths, so that I can live well, for
Yes.
sure. We are, is it are you on, you are
Yes.
sharing with us today um, some medium that is teaching you some valuable lesson or truth in life.
Yes. So the book I'm going to be sharing is called A
Ooh,
Course in Miracles. And it says the text, the workbook, and the manual for teachers, and it's the advent of a great awakening. not entirely sure who it's by. Do you know who this is by?
We will put that in the
In the
the
show
show notes.
notes.
It's a kind of, the interesting thing is there's another book called the Hermetica
But I
or the
guess since it's like
Kabbalion.
almost Bible structured, it doesn't have an author, but that's interesting.
It has one, but I think that's the point of
Yeah.
not saying it, that it's sort of a wisdom, wisdom truths that
Right.
don't necessarily come from one person. It comes from above.
Right. So I don't really have anything specific to share about the book necessarily because I actually have not even read the whole thing. But the reason that I'm so attracted to this book is because I was outside one day, and when I'm working, making beads, getting to my quota, sometimes I just need a break to just relax, lay down, maybe get something to eat. But when it's springtime or summer, one of my favorite things to do is just lay outside.
Mm-hmm.
And so I grabbed this book, and I could have sworn that I saw one of the numbered miracles or descriptions of a miracle as being a miracle is just a change of mind. And so from there, I was just so attracted to this book, and that stayed with me. And now when I go back to read it, I can't even find that.
And I think, because I know you had mentioned it to me, I feel like if you Google a miracle is just a change of mind, it will point you directly maybe
to which one it is. Yeah. But yeah, this book is really amazing. And I do one day want to read the entire thing. But that just sat with me so closely because I feel like miracles before my interpretation of that is just this kind of waiting for something to happen. Or even if there is no waiting, something will happen. Not you enacting a miracle. And so once I was given that opportunity and that knowledge and that information to decide when miracles take place in my life, I was just so grateful to the book, honestly.
I love that. It is the first experience of that book. So I know it must be near the front because
you've read the same thing.
Oh no, literally, it's why I have that book.
Yeah,
that literally that exact same thing. That a miracle is just a change of mind. It just was freedom.
Yeah,
I'm like, oh, my miracles are in my hands, and I played with it immediately.
Yeah,
I was like, if I change my mind about this thing, will that feel like a miracle immediately? And I think anybody who tests that, they are testing dying. You're dying to one way of thinking, but realizing, oh no, I live immediately, like the front of your hand and the back of your hand. I live immediately after I died to a certain way of thinking that isn't benefiting me.
Absolutely, yeah.
It's definitely magical in that way.
Have you read the whole book? Or parts of it?
Yes, I have dived into it. It's so rich in that way, in the same way you read one axiom and it sort of glitched you. It's all like that.
Okay,
so you definitely got to take a bite of that thing and then go in your
digest
Savasana and just like.
That's honestly why I've been reading the last book I shared for so long.
Yeah.
The Flower of Life book.
Oh yeah, some of this stuff is like
some of the talks Osho has. I just be like, I just need to think about that. I just need to process that, and I don't need to listen to it anymore.
Go no more. Go no further. I love that. We are going to inquire with our wisdom owl for the question of today's episode. Are you reading the question or am I reading the question? I don't know.
You.
Oh,
I read the last one.
Okay. Let's see. Oh my goodness. I feel like we did this.
Maybe.
Inadvertently, maybe to define fearlessness for you.
Okay, yes. Fearlessness for me, this is a little different than what we talked about. Yeah. I would say it's a different question. Because I described fear as the fear of fearlessness.
Okay. So what is fearlessness for you?
Fearlessness for me is no hesitation. But not like recklessness.
Okay.
But like I think to be fearless and to be reckless is not the same thing.
Okay.
Because recklessness, so this is kind of going to segue into one of our topics.
Okay.
Do you want to talk about it? Hold on.
Yes.
Okay. So this is gonna kind of segue into one of our future topics
Mhm.
about how discipline and freedom
Ah,
are a double, two sides of one coin.
absolutely.
And so I feel like fearlessness, it has the same discipline aspect that recklessness doesn't have.
Ah, okay.
So if I have a structure for my life and it fits within the structure of my life, um doing whatever fits within the structure of my life without hesitation
Got it.
looks like fearlessness
That
to
makes
me. But
complete
at the
sense.
same time, because I'm a very structured person, sometimes you do have to break that down.
Mhm,
Kind of like when you're repotting a plant, like
mhm.
you have to break down the soil so that it can be in a larger pot to even grow even more. So I feel like that's a point of fearlessness too, but it's always an attempt to make more room for a broader, larger structure. So it's still not
Yeah, it's
reckless.
not out the box. It's a
Exactly.
bigger box. It's
Yeah,
not out the box.
exactly.
I love that. While you were talking, because yeah, fearlessness is a sort of unreachable word for me. I'm like, what does that feel? I think of daredevil things. Like if I just think fearlessness, period. But what came up for me is that fearlessness in my life is the ability to be here
Mhm.
with whatever is happening,
Yeah.
however it is happening, and just be present with it. Like it takes fearlessness for me to do that, to say this experience is happening and maybe it's super exciting. It's so overwhelming that I feel like my head could pop. And to stay there and to be with that and to breathe through that and to notice what's happening to my body and to notice the scene is an act of fearlessness for me. And certainly when things are super super challenging, because I have had the old reactionary nature that says if something is difficult, hard, hurting, make it stop. Make it stop, because my fear was if it didn't stop, what would happen to me? How would I react? So trying to make it stop is all about, the fear of the unknown. So fearlessness is like whatever is happening here this is.
Mhm.
And I'm going to practice fearlessness by saying I surrender to the reality of this situation, absolutely knowing by this big old age that whatever is happening right now is going to pass. And I
Right.
think this is why it's easy for me to practice being fearless but in the face of a bunch of situations, even this one where I was certain I was going to die in this hot air balloon, is because even if I physically die, I know something else happens. I don't know what it is, but something else happens. It's not the end.
Yeah.
And I'm kind of curious about what happens outside past my body. I am. I'm curious because I've explored me past my body. While I'm in my body, I've been able to do that. And so, yeah, I think for me, fearlessness is just staying, not fleeing.
And for me, I just literally thought about, and I just want to play with the idea because I literally just came to mind. But while you were talking, I was thinking about how does responsibility play into fearlessness? Because you were talking about how you can feel fear, but if you have the ability to respond to it, then do that.
Then
But if
do
you
that.
don't, that's a whole nother situation. And then you can still be in the presence of what's
Hmm.
happening, even if you don't have the ability to
But the
respond.
beautiful thing about responsibility, the ability to respond, is that my stillness and my staying is my response.
Mm.
That is my ability in that moment. I have, when something is difficult, if somebody's going off, or if I'm in a scene outside in the world and I can't control any of that or
Right.
do anything about that, I do still have the ability to respond inside of myself by coming to center or leaving the scene or
Right.
whatever it is. So there is responsibility that I am willing to take for my life and myself at all costs, at all turns. And I know when I ask myself that, what is my responsibility here? What is my ability to respond? I can find it immediately and again, feel safe, which is fearless,
Awesome.
which is indeed. Thank you. Thank you for your time and your talent,
Of course.
your
Thank
wisdom and
you.
your insight. Thank you for tapping in with us, tuning in, watching. If you are watching the video version of this podcast, if you are interested in watching the video version of this podcast, you can become a patron on our Guardian Meditation Patreon page. You can also follow us on social media at Sovereign U Pod on Instagram. And wherever you listen to podcasts, you can check us out. Also, like, comment, subscribe if that's how podcasts work. And we will see you next time. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
My joy is now. Altogether lovely, pleasure and abundance. All things as it should be, pleasure and abundance.